I don't like your tone. When those 5 words land, something shifts. You stop talking about what happened. You stop presenting facts. You stop holding your position. Instead, you suddenly find yourself explaining yourself, softening your delivery, reassessing how you came across, wondering if you were too much. But here's what's actually happening in that interaction. Your facts were too precise to argue with. Your logic had no gaps. Your position had no cracks. Your authority in that moment was too solid to break directly. So they didn't try to break your argument, they broke your authority instead. I don't like your tone. It's not feedback about your delivery, it's a tactic. Specifically, it's what gets used when your facts are strong enough to threaten someone's position and they have no logical ground left to stand on. And the moment you started defending your tone, you handed them exactly what your argument wouldn't give them. Tone policing doesn't happen everywhere. Nobody tells you they don't like your tone when you're agreeing with them. Nobody questions your delivery when your facts align with what they wanted to hear. Nobody suddenly becomes concerned about how you're communicating when you're accommodating their position. You don't get tone policed in rooms where your authority is welcome. You don't get tone policed when you're softening your position to match theirs. You don't get tone policed when the conversation costs them nothing. You get tone policed selectively, when your facts are precise enough to be uncomfortable, when your authority in the moment is stronger than theirs, when there is no logical counter-argument available, when conceding your point means conceding their position entirely. That's not a coincidence. Tone policing appears at the exact moment your authority becomes too silent to challenge directly. Because when facts can't be argued, delivery becomes the target, and the environment benefits from you defending your tone instead of holding your ground. Tone policing is not a communication correction. It's an authority restructuring tactic. It works by doing one specific thing: shifting the subject of the conversation from what was said to how it was said, from logic to emotion, from facts to delivery, from your position to your presentation. And the moment that shift happens, you're no longer operating from authority, you're operating from defense. Here's the scene. You're in a conversation where the facts are on your side. You've done the work. You have the information. You presented your position clearly. And the other person has no counter. They can't dispute what you said. They can't find the error in your logic. They can't move your facts. So instead of engaging the argument, they look at you and say, I don't appreciate how you're speaking to me. You don't have to be so aggressive. I don't like your tone. There's no need to get emotional about this. And watch what happens next. You stop. You replay the conversation in your head. You assess your delivery. You start softening retroactively. I wasn't trying to come across that way. I'm sorry if it came out wrong. I just wanted to make sure I was being clear. Your facts didn't change. Your position didn't change. Your argument didn't weaken. But your authority just left the conversation. Not because you were wrong, because you started defending your tone instead of holding your ground. Stop asking, why do I always come across too strong? And start asking, what were my facts about to do to their position? That question is where your authority comes back online. This response didn't start with this conversation. You learned somewhere early and repeatedly that being too precise carried a cost. That certainty made people uncomfortable. That facts delivered without apology created friction that came back to you. So you learned to adapt. Think about an electrical circuit. Current moves through a system carrying power from one point to another. When the current is strong enough, when enough power is moving through the line, the circuit breaker trips. Not because the current is wrong, because the system isn't built to handle that much power moving through it at once. So it interrupts. It cuts the current before it reaches its destination, before it complete the connection, before it can do what it was built to do. I don't like your tone is a circuit breaker. It doesn't engage the argument. It doesn't address the facts. It trips. At the exact moment your authority is carrying enough current to complete a connection the other person could not afford to let land. And here's what you learned over time. Every time the breaker tripped, you reduced the current. You softened the delivery. You added qualifiers. You preface your facts with apologies. You manage your authority down so the circuit wouldn't trip again. You weren't losing arguments. You were pre-chipping your own breaker before anyone else could reach for it. And an environment that never has to engage with the full current of your authority never develops the capacity to handle it, because you made yourself smaller before they had to ask. Ask yourself directly, who benefits when your authority gets redirected from your facts to your delivery? It's not you. The manager whose decision is being challenged by someone with more accurate information, they benefit. Your authority shifts from the argument to your presentation and their position stays intact. The colleague whose work has a clear error you were about to name precisely, they benefit. The conversation moves from their mistake to your manner and accountability disappears. The family member whose behavior you've named accurately, they benefit. The focus moves from what you did to how you brought it up, and nothing has to change. The partner whose logic has no ground, they benefit. You spend the next hour managing how you came across instead of holding what you said. Every time your authority gets redirected toward your tone, someone keeps a position they couldn't defend. Someone avoids accountability from a decision they made. Someone exits a conversation they were losing. Someone maintains influence they hadn't even earned. But sometimes it doesn't stop at your tone. Sometimes when the facts are too precise, when there is no argument left to make, the tactic goes further. It stops attacking your delivery and it starts attacking your character. I look at you differently now. I see how you move. That's the same tactic with a longer reach. Because now it's not just about the conversation. Now it's about every conversation that comes after it. Now the cost of being right isn't just defending your tone. It's your standing, your reputation, how you're perceived in that space going forward. Think about what that's designed to do. Next time, before you even open your mouth, you're calculating whether being right is worth being seen differently. That's the goal. Not to address what you said, not to find the error in your position, but to make your authority expensive enough that you stop using it. And that's how a power transfer doesn't just happen in one conversation. It gets installed for every conversation that follows. Here's what most women don't realize. Every time you soften your delivery in response, you completed their circuit break for them. Not because you were wrong, not because your tone actually needed adjusting, but because you kept participating in a redirect that was never about your delivery. Every time you added, "I'm sorry if that came out wrong," you moved the subject off your facts. Every time you re-explained yourself with a gentler entry, you gave their position time to recover. Every time you lowered your authority to manage their comfort, you handed them what your argument wouldn't give them. And every time you stayed quiet in the next conversation because you remember how they looked at you, you let a reputation threat do what the facts couldn't. You thought you were being reasonable. What you were actually doing was restoring authority to a position that had already lost it. Here's what most people misunderstand. The discomfort they expressed was not about your tone. It was about the current your authority was carrying and what it was about to do to their position. That discomfort doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the argument they couldn't make. And the moment you stop pre-tripping your own breaker, your authority stays in the conversation long enough to complete the connection. That's when the dynamic shifts. Notice this. When was the last time someone questioned your tone or told you they saw you differently? at the exact moment your facts were the strongest thing in the room. Not when you were being careless, not when you were actually out of line, just when your position was too precise for them to argue with directly. That wasn't about your delivery. That was your authority making contact with a position that couldn't survive it. Here's what happens when you stop softening. And I'm telling you now so you recognize it when it comes. They'll say you've gotten aggressive. They'll tell you that's not how business is done. They'll say they look at you differently now. They'll tell you they see how you move. They'll suggest you've shown them who you really are. Not because your behavior was unprofessional, not because your facts were wrong, because your authority completed a circuit they needed to stay open. When you stop pre-tripping your own breaker, the people who relied on your self-interruption will reach for the switch themselves. They'll escalate the tone accusation. They'll reframe your precision as a personality flaw. They'll make your professionalism the subject so your facts never have to be addressed. They'll withdraw regard as a penalty for being right without apologizing for it. That's not feedback. That's not a professional assessment. That's a power system trying to reinstall the breaker you just removed. And recognizing it is what keeps your authority in the room instead of retreating to defend something that was never the issue. Because the resistance is not a sign you went too far. It's confirmation that your current finally reached its destination. Tone policing loses its power the moment you refuse to accept the redirect. Not through confrontation, not through defending your tone, not through explaining how you weren't being aggressive, through one thing: keeping the subject on what was said. Here's what it sounds like in real time. Someone says, "I don't appreciate your tone." O responds, "I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to come across that way. I just wanted to make sure I was being clear. I didn't mean for it to sound like that." New responds, "Let's stay with what I actually said. Is there something in the content that's incorrect?" Someone says, "That's not how business is done." O responds, "I understand. I may have handled that differently. Let me think about how to approach it going forward." New responds, "Walk me through what was incorrect about my position." Someone says, "I look at you differently now. I see how you move." O responds, "That wasn't my intention. I respect our working relationship, and I don't want this to affect things between us." New responds, "Noted," and you don't move. The shift is not in the volume, it's in refusing to move the subject. Because authority doesn't require a softer delivery, it requires you to stay on the argument they're trying to leave. Here's the distinction most people never reach. You've been asking, why do I always come across too intense when I'm making a point? But that was never the real question. The real question is, what was your authority about to do to their position before they redirected you? Because here's what's structurally true. I don't like your tone doesn't appear when your facts are weak. It doesn't appear when your position is uncertain. It doesn't appear when you're still figuring it out. And neither does "I look at you differently now. I see how you move." Those phrases appear when your argument is complete, when your facts are exact, when your authority in the moment is the strongest current in the room. Tone policing isn't something you fix by adjusting your delivery. It's something you neutralize by refusing to accept the redirect. And reputation threats, the ones designed to make your authority expensive, lose their power the moment you stop paying the cost they're charging. The moment you keep the subject on what was said instead of how you said it, the tactic has no landing point. The circuit can't trip if you don't complete the break. Not because you got louder, because you kept your authority exactly where it was when they reached for the switch. Now you have a choice. You can keep softening your delivery every time someone questions your tone and hand your authority to the argument they couldn't make on their own, or you can recognize those words, whether it's 5 of them or 10 of them, for exactly what they are: a redirect away from facts that were too precise to dispute. And keep your authority in the room. One keeps the pattern intact, the other keeps the current running. Quietly, cleanly, permanently. This channel isn't about becoming louder. It's about understanding the tactics that interrupt your authority mid-sentence and learning to recognize them before you complete the break yourself. If you're done softening positions that didn't need softening, subscribe. You're exactly where you're supposed to be.